new foreign Terrans, but we're not quite there yet. The entire NA region, if we're being like just like purely facts, as a way to go. In terms of tournament results, it's actually a bit of a discussion that I guess I'll get into after the introductions. In the top left, that's the blue Terran. You know him. You all love him. The streamer. It's Jason. In the bottom right, as the green Zerg, it is CalebAracous. Some people might recognize this name. He actually just is in a lot of these qualifiers pretty consistently. But then some of you might not. He doesn't make it too far, but he has made it a challenger previously, I'm pretty sure. He did get beat out by Estrella yesterday, and then, let's see here. Got beat out by Rob after that. So, I do expect him to win this series. Jason is a good Terran player, but as far as tournament, play, it's not actually his forte. It's not something that he's trying to do. He's, doing the stream grind more than he is doing the hide my builds and win tournaments grind. Yo, what's up, Fear Dragon? Thank you for that tier 2 resub for 53 months. Printa Fighting. Yeah, he's over on Base Straight TV. Hoping to remake the same run as yesterday, I guess, but even a little bit better. Anyways, so I was discussing, just like the facts are there that NA as a whole doesn't quite live up to the European tournaments, but it is a feisty discussion if you go on Twitter or on the Pylon Show or anything like that. And I think that, the facts are here. You see when you do have the mixed lands that Europeans as a whole get better results, excluding maybe last year's Montreal was a little weird, or specifically out of even the Polish players were doing oddly poor. But for the most part, that's just something that we can look at. Their ladders definitely more difficult, but and they have more tournament experience. They've been around a lot longer than a lot of these NA players. But a lot of the NA players rightfully say that there's not that much of a gap, especially when it does come to ladder. Plenty of these guys play on the European ladder, right? And they want to have the chance to prove themselves, and not just by defeating X, Y, other NA guy, but actually just really showing good StarCraft. And I feel like a lot of these guys are getting close, so just bringing that up, kind of rounding things out about the Epic discussion, which again, just super unfortunate that Epic, now he doesn't actually have a chance to even get into challenges. This is the last qualifier, ladder race is done. He didn't get seeded in, and it is unlikely that he will send himself to Kiev for summer. That's really just a bummer. Well. But anyway, so on this game, I do always feel like the most comfortable position for a Terran player entering into a tournament or high stakes ladder match or show match or whatever. I do feel like a lot of us will be comfortable against Zerg more than any other race. Oh, losing the Reaper necessarily. Not that I was going to do very much more. Not just because it does seem to be a matchup that a lot of Terrans are like, yeah, it's okay, even if there are some grumbles about late game and all that. But also that is a matchup where you do kind of get the first 6 minutes to yourself. There are obviously Zerg all-lanes that change things up. It's not nearly as hectic and stressful as a TVT or even a TVP where you get the first, 6 minutes to yourself, but then you might be under pressure by Blink Stalkers and feeling even more pressure to end the game. Thinking that late game Protoss is even scarier than late game Zerg. That's the general sentiment that you get around the pros, but even of course in the Masters and Grandmaster League, of which these players both are. Marine is going to try and deny this Overlord Scout. I guess it successfully did so, because the armory is down here. So if an Overlord was positioned, that would be the bad place, the worst place to put it, but that's not where the Overlord is. So this armory is going to be a bit of a surprise. Caleb is getting a okay timed Baneling Nest here. It's finishing around that 5-minute mark where a lot of the Hellbent attacks do start to transform and really initiate. Hopefully you have some queens to buy time while the Banelings form, and you don't take too much damage. But the creep spread's not quite out there yet. The queen count's also not that high, but as soon as he sees the Hellions and he sees them turn to Hellbats, a 4th queen has joined the fray. 5 Banelings are being made. That's exactly what I was talking about. Want to focus fire down the Banshee if possible, but she's a little out of range of that detection. in the lair. That's done. The Overseer has not been made, but these queens are doing their job. They're soaking up the shots. Here come the Banelings now, crashing in, getting some okay shots. 2 queens go down. The third one probably should die as well. The Banshee would be okay to sacrifice a little bit of health for it. That's exactly what happens there, but the Hellbats are finally cleaned up. Now, in total to get 3 queens, that is not too shabby. Suicide Banelings, you know, as well. You always can consider that they traded out some gas units for that, even though it was obviously worth it. So I would say that's not too shabby, but it is almost always like, okay, what is your macro like behind this? Obviously, the Zerg is going to be just straight up messed up because the queens aren't there to creep, spread, and inject. So you have to be wise with how you use whatever energy you do have. But for the Terran player, they were busy microing the Banshee, the Hellions. Maybe they relate to the factories. If that's the case, then maybe it's not as effective. But if they're literally innovation, and he very rarely stops macroing, I don't want to say perfectly, because what's, you know, perfect StarCraft, blah, 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 but yeah, not many of us are innovation. And it is a lot more Hellions just shown right there to that Ling. So if Caleb wasn't already suspicious of Mac, I mean, he certainly is now. Overseer, actually a changing already is there to see Mac, so there you go. And the Overseer will come back in, I guess just to confirm the Changeling gets killed, what exactly it is mech-wise, Cyclones or Tanks coming out. We actually have both. Tank feeling a little bit safe there, since Jason has lost a lot of his vision. He's got Hellions. I guess vision isn't the right word, is it? He's actually got Hellions and almost every single attack path. Just about, excluding this one, I suppose. But the Banshees not being on the side of the map, that's, you know, that's the map presence I wanted to see. That's what usually sees the roaches moving across the map first and foremost, and making the Zerg reconsider actually doing any type of aggressive push. Not that Caleb was actually setting up for one. He is getting double attack upgrades here, going into roaches, but getting a 4th base and already up to 6 drones. Has a solid macro foundation. This Overseer does see the 2nd Cyclone pop. That's, yeah. I would say that if you see 2 Cyclones, then you're pretty much confirming it is going to be Cyclone mech for a little while. Thank you, Maximal Craziness, for those 100 bitty bits, bitty boos. Banshees do return home after just a minor poke there on the creep spread to be repaired, and I don't mind it. Banshees, yeah, their ideal use, you know, if we're really talking ideal games, is to clear creep spread, catch queens without detection or just a little apart from each other, catch roaches coming across the map. I mean, their actual damage can be significant if the Zerg player is messing up, basically. But what really can be so good about them is that you can feel safe if you have the Banshees. There's Nidus Worms to bring along the queens, Zova drops to bring along the queens, and eventually we'd have Hydralisks, or in this case even just Vipers, whatever pops up from the Spire as well. But for a time, those Banshees do make you feel fairly safe, and yeah, I think it is great to see them repaired. They do want to be on that front line doing something. So we brought them back, and he's trying to clear up the keep spread. But until you get those queens, it feels almost useless. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. As the queens move them away, we just replant the creep. With such a high number of queens too, 4 on the front line. A normal amount, but still, like, not 1 or 2. You don't really have to worry about transfuse energy being kept either, I would say. Good number of Banelings. Good number of Banelings. I mean, Caleb is almost maxed out here on Ling Baneling Roach Ravager, so not going into those Hydras. Not at all. Actually, not even bothering joining the Hydra list and just looking towards that hive for it seems to be Infestors plus Blinding Clouds. Both very strong counters to the Cyclones, as well as to Liberators, which were very possibly on the way here. Fusion Core finishing up shortly after the additional starports have been added. I mean, there's a future where we see battle cruisers, but the first step into going into that late game is usually adding on the Liberators with range. And then we also have Drilling Claws, which is going to be an interesting addition. A lot of times they are not microing their Vipers against Drilling Claws. It's Widow Mines because not everyone's adding them in. They're still relying on tanks defensively or Vikings to shoot them down, not Widowmines. So sometimes they get these really amazing pop-offs. Also going to be helpful against the Ling Baneling. A little less so against the Roach Ravager, but they ignore armor. Not bad if they get a decent shot. 5th command center a bit bold over here, but providing almost a choke is a very weak one. That could be instantly just clicked on and sniped, actually, but it's working out right now. Sensor tower going down, the second one, more tanks being added on. I mean, Jason not going for the active aggression of a Cyclone-based composition, which you'll see some other players do. They'll get to like maybe 8 Cyclones, maybe 6, with a decent number of Hellions, and they'll start to try and control the map, because theoretically you're supposed to be able to leave when you kite, but the Lings do create a problem for that. Sometimes they get those surrounds, and then you regret going out in the middle of the map, which was exactly what Caleb was looking for right there in that engagement, but doesn't quite find it. He does find the command center, however. He does end up getting punished for a rather out there spot. I think that it was supposed to happen, but Caleb not actually digging into the army of Jason. Can't just be happy about that. He actually needs to be a little bit concerned. The army really was not that touched there. And while the tanks aren't coming forward nearly as fast as everything else, but they are coming, the rest of the army is still rather large. The tanks are just going to be an anchor to provide a little something extra, but here we are, the Broodlords. Caleb not having that missed time that can sometimes happen where you think you have a dominant position, you lose half your units, and you say, oh shit, like I'm not even on additional tech. He actually is here. But is it going to be enough Broodlords? Cyclones can be fantastic in these low number Broodlord situations. In fact, sometimes they are the best thing to transfer into in some other type of mech games, but only when the Broodlord count is low, and you still have to take care of the ground arm before you can actually get underneath them. So Caleb trying to come in from 2 different sides, and he does do a nice pincer move, but is it going to be enough? The Corruptors helping out against the Liberators. The Liberators are doing a lot of damage, though these Roaches and Ravagers a little out of that position, and Cyclones, 5 of them off to the right side. Maybe they could have helped take down the ground army to literally 0 Roaches and Ravagers, but 5 Cyclones probably would not have beaten 5 Broodlords, and whatever, you know, reinforcements are coming out here for Caleb, who, by the way, had a superior bank before that fight and is now using it to try and remax. Neither one of them quite capable of doing so in too quick of a fashion. So Jason should have another chance to survive here, but he's got to be scared at this point. That push was supposed to be that kind of pre-deadly Broodlord timing, ideally before Broodlords were even out, right? But if they are out, hopefully they're in kind of a low enough number. Hopefully he's chewed through enough of the ground army. It was close, even though it was Caleb dominated towards the last couple of seconds. You gotta wonder if there wasn't that pincer move, if maybe the 5 Cyclones were involved from the get-go, or, you know, something else. Positioning was a little different. Could that have been the real difference maker? And that, I would say yes. There's a lot of explosive units in this, you know, with the Banelings, with the Zerg, Corrosive Biles, and the tanks for Jason, that, like, these things can really change it up. But the problem was always going to be, could you actually take on the Broodlords? And the Broodlings, they shoot out. And that's... maybe. It's a maybe. The Cyclones maybe get 1 lock on, but they die because they die pretty quickly, let's be real. Anyways, that fight's over, and now we're back to, okay, does Jason have enough to remax? And he does. I mean, Caleb didn't even try to move out there. He didn't really, max out on Roach Ravager. Didn't quite have enough of a bank to do that anyways, but on top of that, he doesn't want to remax with Roach Ravager. We had more Corruptors, Vipers being added on, even more Queens here for the front lines and continual creep spread. Something that Jason's push took care of on the right side, but really nowhere else, so he's got to kind of get back on that denial here. But yeah, Caleb was in no way really going to be able to counter, and Jason was remaxing at a pretty steady rate as well, with 4 bases and 5 actually at the end of that fight. He did have a very steady production flow, and has now added on Vikings as the option against the Broodlords, but is that really going to be the best option? I think, and again, one of those emergency things where the Broodlord counts are low, you're kind of catching the Zerg player in a heated battle where they're kind of getting their feet underneath them. Those Vikings coming out, even 4 at a time, that's a decent amount, right? Can be enough, but if it's this type of game, where Caleb, you know, he saved his 5 bases, he's now getting to a 6th, he should be banking soon, as he is back up to maxed, and now can actually choose engagements wisely and choose compositions wisely. That's when Vikings start to look really quite silly. There's a reason that Nate and I harp on Vikings so much when we cast, maybe Nate a little bit more, but yeah, it's absolutely true. When it comes down to the spellcasters of the Zerg, if they're not in a desperate position where they have the chance to mess up, they can be awfully powerful. You know, I'll leave it at that. And Thors, they are weak to Neural Parasite. That's when having Liberators with range already does help, and I think it is still stronger of the two compositions. But we'll see how the concaves of the Vikings go. We'll see how the micro goes. The best thing about Vikings, and I think this is sometimes not really focused on enough, is that their range is amazing. Yet you'll see most Terran players still make fun of them as a unit, and not, you know, unrightfully. Like, they are sometimes like, too hard to use, even with their range. But when you see them dodging around some of these cliffs, suddenly you're like, man, that range is really annoying. So we'll see, we'll see. Queens are finally being taken out. You know, the Lings over here, the Roach is taking out a good squad of units, but on the right side, managing to find, I would say, the more important than a couple of creep tumors or the army, finding the Queens. It's so annoying. Still at 5, but they are injecting. Jason has set up quite the little turtle area here with sensor towers, Liberator range, and of course still a very strong ground army. Working on his upgrades as well. Never quite got to that second armory, it looks like. No, he did. Okay, maybe because it's a different position, he hasn't gotten double armory upgrades, but I feel like I haven't seen 2 upgrades at a time in this game. I think it's an important thing to mention, but you know, we have a fight going on, so analysis later. Command center goes down. Corruptors just body those Liberators. The Vikings did retreat. I guess a parasitic bomb hit them and took their health way down. Maybe along with a fungal as well that will almost kill them. If not straight up kill them, if they're all stacked, I guess. So I'm not sure which one, but the infestors aren't here, so yeah, it was the parasitic bombs. In fact, there's no infestors. I saw the pathogen glands and the neural parasite, just assumed they had some, so that's no, he's just now making them. So definitely that parasitic bomb. That's why they're so weak. But Jason now making almost, when he wants to, he's making 8 Vikings at a time. He'll certainly be able to replace them. I'm so worried about just this, the cost effectiveness of those Vipers. And the Spore Crawler is also on the front line. It does get kind of scary, although most, if not all of them, were dead. They went a little too far forward away from the army. These Cyclones grabbing the left side base is not the most impactful thing right now, but it's moves like that that will add up. And at the same time, Jason getting a secured 5th, 6th, yeah. That is really nice to see. A lot of the times on King's Cove, we're going to go past like the 14-15 minute mark. We are going to see this base kind of be a main focal point of the attack. But right now, it's actually the base even further to the right. Thank you very much. Plagides. Plug. I never actually learned how to say your name. Thank you for the 6 months. These Cyclones doing a lot more damage off to the side than I would have expected. But they are finally being cleaned up. At the same time, I guess that was cleaned up by the Roaches that are not that expensive for Caleb to afford. Although he's never really gotten back up to that bank like I thought he would. He was maxed out, but he still had some units to trade off, I guess, and he was losing those Queens, losing those Spore Crawlers, and still making an expensive Bruther army, so never the bank I thought he was going to get. But this is where the real action will come. It'll be the most important part of the game, not necessarily what's happening over here, although it is important to note how much Caleb can get mining. Usually at this point, their creeps are a little farther out on all the sides. This left side has really been torn down, and he can't secure another base, so he's finally just taking this one. And eventually, I think I'll remember to take this one, but that's a little while. A little ways away. Finally, Jason does take this base. Does he have any of those upgrades for the buildings? He does not. I feel like he would benefit from that. Even the high psych check on the auto turrets or the missile turrets can help out, but oof, this is a nasty fight. Just, yeah. Vikings looking so bad against this. Corruptors easily won with the help of their spellcasters. 12 Corruptors to now 5 Vikings. Command Center does go down. The most SCVs do get saved. We finally have that Thor production as well as a Ghost Academy. I do like seeing ghosts, but they can be hard to control. They can be hard to use against the fungals, which interrupts their snipe. And getting EMPs can be very, very difficult to do. 17 SCVs have gone down alongside 2 bases. That is starting to get really harsh there as Jason never took the left side. And not only did those 2 bases die, I think he also lost, like, yeah, that orbital right here, right? So he doesn't have a ton of extra command centers like you would hope at 21 minutes to just be like, you know what, I still got a chance. He's actually running low on fumes here in terms of bases, so he's lifting his natural right now. You will see, and be able to stop this Ling run by. The Thors will literally body block there, so the flat depots weren't up. But those Thors feel like they came out so damn late. It's not to say that Vikings are bad and Thors are always the best option, because there's so many things that get complicated in these fights, but it does feel like Thors would be the better option. They can be abducted, but with how, like, literally the impact, right? A payload here, how much damage it does, you usually lose the Viper for it, and then usually you're not abducting what's going on here. Usually that just costs you the Vipers to whatever miscellaneous Viking or other Thors there are, and then you can actually break through the spellcasters. You could break through the Corruptors. Well, you don't have to worry about Corruptors actually with Thors, do you? You can break through whatever on the ground, and those Thors on top of Brood Lords, they do like 3-shot them, I'm pretty sure. But they certainly tear them down fast. I love the continued Hellion run by, still abusing the left side where there's no creep spread. These ghosts could not, they don't have to only be used defensively, they can also start getting nukes and used offensively, adding in a little bit more harassments. And it's never a bad thing, but if you're low on minerals, it is 100, I believe, for a nuke, so they can get a little expensive after a while. 15 drones go down, but 19 more instantly remade. Caleb not just taking the middle base finally, but also even grabbing this base since he had such a chokehold to that top side. More power to him. This is an orbital, not a planetary. So, laying run bys despite this one Liberator. Oh, it's literally on top of the command center. So that's, that base would be totally wrecked by a speedling run by. Caleb just actually needs to do it. And speaking of Lings, they are fully upgraded on their attack with the Junior Glands. The Carapace was ignored for quite a long time, which is a little surprising because the Carapace upgrade does change. Well, actually, I guess it doesn't change the upgrade, the kill shot, once the Hellbats and the Cyclones have their own attack upgrade. But that's something that, like, it's funny, right? Because Jason also was a little late to the attack upgrades. He went for that armor first, which we see a lot of times in the Cyclones, but regardless, we do still have Caleb with more impressive upgrades. 3/3 attack, +2 air weapons, whereas Jason is now just, I mean, he's still at 1 ship, 1 vehicle, and 2 for both of those. Wow, that was cool. All right, serious style points to Caleb right there. Ooh, neural parasiting the ghost and then getting the EMP on the other ghosts. That was sick. Nicely done there. Neural parasite on a lot of the Thors. There we go. You do want to try and focus fire whatever you can down, get tanks on top of them, get liberators on top of them. But Jason, by moving out into the Zerg army, arguably made it a little bit easier for Caleb to do what he just did. But the Viking count really ripping through the Corruptors. There's no parasitic bomb energy, so they're just still very healthy, full health in fact. Maybe too much emphasis on taking care of the Thors means that, well, yeah, more than half the Thors, I believe, died. The Vesters died, the Vikings live, and Jason actually finds momentum here. Definitely not what I expected, but Caleb, I guess, kind of going in through a choke right there. The Liberators also didn't die for having sieged up literally on the army, even with their range available. I thought for sure they'd die. No, they actually helped out. So a couple of things not going as fluidly, I suppose, as it could be expected. Maybe Caleb thinking there was too much of an opportunity and when there really wasn't. Not when he was choked in like that. So that is very nice for Jason, who now, with that attack, can now hope to get his bases back up. And he did finally rebuild extra bases as soon as his income started to come in again, start to bank a little bit again, since they hadn't fought for a little while. The army to the top side gets a little overeager, overstays its welcome, but the Thors die, the Vikings continue to live, and now Jason sees that that Remax wasn't on Broodlord Infestor, it was on these cheaper Roach Ravager units, which sometimes those tech swaps, right, from Broodlords to Ultras and back again, can be the most brutal thing about facing a Zerg. The truth is, the Roach Ravager, oh, the Parasitic Bomb's gonna be so good. Yeah, definitely land those Vikings, but they're not gonna have that against the Lings or anything on the ground, so it's kind of like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. But I think it would have been worse if he had just kept up in the air. Everything would have popped. But anyways, Roach Ravager is probably the least complicated army to take on right now. As soon as he realized that was going to be the Remax, you know, obviously the Vikings don't help very much, and that was the worst thing about that. But even Thors can do okay against the army here. Banelings won't do a lot of damage to them. Roaches and Ravagers take a couple shots, take care of it. But we're not done with the spellcasters yet. Neural Parasites come down, making the Thors work against Jason. Planetary is not done either to help out here, and he has nothing to kill these infestors. The Neural Parasite range is getting a little out there, so the Thors are unleashed. But that Hellion count was a little low. These Lings have been a lot more effective than they probably should have. The transition back into Hellion Cyclone was not quite fast enough for Caleb's Remax, and those infestors just taking out so many of the Thors out of the equation. And man, if that Planetary had been done, there's a couple different things in that fight that could have made that very, very different. Even a couple of whoops, it easy. A couple of tanks, you know, if you actually had 2 or 3 tanks, one or all of them guarding some of these key bases, that type of attack also looks a lot worse. But no, none of these defensive tanks. He's been trying to max out completely on the army he moves out with. Maybe a couple Liberators here and there to defend. But just entirely done with tanks for a little while. Another Hellion run by does some good work. Clears up 14 drones. Another one catching a lot of the Spine Crawlers. Not quite done. So another good run by. Not quite worth all the Hellions, I guess. Oh, you're going to stay there? All right, then. But Caleb not only remaxing once on that Roach Ravager Ling Baneling, and you gotta remember that the Banelings and the Ravagers part of that do cost a little bit extra, he also has started to go back into Broodlord production, which is obviously very expensive. So we're back to that no bank scenario, and if Jason could just get a couple of minutes here and still mine, then he would have another shot at taking a really good engagement. But Caleb has been dominating in that income for quite some time. His bases have not been torn down since minute 14 or something like that. It's just been the drones, which are relatively easy to replace. And he's just, you know, just looking at the map, right? He's just taking over the entire map. Infestitarians will kill the building very, very quickly, especially because we never got the addition of the armor upgrades or range upgrades of the buildings. I would say there was a point where Jason could have afforded that, but it was a very small timing where he had a couple extra minerals. Otherwise, you do want those extra command centers, and you do want to transition in some of these stronger units, like he was getting into Thors, getting into Ghosts. So it is understandable with how action-packed this game has really been. You know, no passive 5,000 bank for either player. Well, Caleb a little bit on the gas, I guess. Means that you don't have those miscellaneous upgrades you often see added in. This scan reveals a very scary army. It is a lot of that Lair Tech army on the ground. It's not pure Broodlord Infestor Corruptor. And maybe, just maybe, this army of Jason can do something, but no pullback there. I thought he was going to micro a little bit more. Still just powers through that wave of aggression. New coming down to try and save his life, but you know, this is the problem that we had 15 minutes ago. Whatever was left over here can't actually jump on top of those Broodlords to kill them. Even the one Thor could have got a couple shots and getting abducted and instantly killed. Cyclone's still too busy dealing with Ravagers, and the Broodlings on the ground. No Hellbats to support him, really. Means that Jason is out of luck, taking too bad of an engagement, and not ever able to get to enough of a bank to be like, you know what, he has a shot. No. Sub 100 supply, even if he had a bank, it would take 3 minutes to actually max out. So Caleb has won a little bit of that war of attrition, but every fight he took seemed like it was really Cost efficient, that's what I was looking for. So we have an even trade, but when you consider that's the whole like mantra of this game is that Zerg's supposed to throw bodies at the other race and then lose more resources, it's actually a good sign that he's in fact winning. The resources lost as more SCVs go down to these crackling run-bys, and that'll be the tap out. GG. Really cool game, though. There was a couple different points where I feel like Jason certainly had a shot. The transition back into Roach Ravager, I guess, was still that, you know, just enough of like, okay, I wasn't expecting that to actually be a scary transfer. I would still say I'm a lot more scared of the big units, Broodlord Ultra, into the very small units of Lings. Because even though you're saying like, well, he has Hellbats, like that's a stupid thing to say. Yeah, that's true. I guess I am thinking mostly of Bio when I'm on, like, Liberator Ghost, and I'm like, no, Lings! I would say that, like, if those Lings that he did have, paired up with the Roach Ravager, weren't there, it's an easier trade. It's an easier thing to evaluate. It's an easier thing to micro against as well, because the Broodlords are, you know, lagging behind, and hopefully the Fungals can't quite catch up. But the army was complicated enough, and it was up against that very anti-Broodlord army, so it was able to overwhelm. But there was you know, a lot of different battles really to analyze in that game. Game number 2 here on Thunderbird. I'm going to be in the habit of not introducing players every single game, because why bother? Okay, let me just check this right now, as you guys won't hear for another 3 minutes. What were the European qualifiers like? So we can really strike up a very intelligent discussion about balance. No, it was 6 Protoss, 1 Terran, and 1 Zerg. I was right. Thank you, Dr. Sidewinder, for the 46-month streak. I'm almost 4. Aw, you're becoming a kid and you're no longer a toddler. Thank you very much. How cool.
Game paused.
Oh, thank you to Sudden Crap. Wonderful name for the 200 bits. Sorry I missed that during some action. Excuse me. Nothing's happening in the game, so I'm just reading through chat, trying to catch up on what you guys are discussing, and I see someone is very salty about TVP and is rightfully being shut down. Yeah, I'm just going to say thanks, Joe, in the future. I'm not going to try and pronounce your name.
Resumed.
It's a dope GS versus the World poster. Thank you very much. I'm one of like 3 or 4 people that's gonna ever have that, so I'm very proud. But real credit goes to Fear Dragon. He had the
Thank you for a piece.
he was, you know, unabashed. Is that word? No, he's unabashedly forward about asking for it, I guess is the way you would put it. Is there a past term for unabashedly? I'm gonna actually look this up. Where's the tenses? Give me the tenses dictionary. Oh, okay, clicking on dictionary just gives you the definition of dictionary. Super cool. Okay, yeah, it is unabashed. He was unabashed. It's unabashed. Learning words. This is what you do in the qualifier. You never try it in actual, like, studio broadcast. You think about a word that you, like, are 90% sure you can pronounce, but since there's, like, that 10%, you're like, never mind. I'm gonna use a different word. Thank you, Iron Warsmith, for the 3-month resub, and, well, again, I guess. That was a double one. You sound sick, hope you feel better. I still have a cough. I would not really call myself sick, though. It does get annoying, I will say, if I'm coughing and talking constantly. Yes, that does hurt my throat. Viking coming out here. Don't forget that last game started with Jason's Hellbat attack, and with the Marauder now being produced, I am suspicious of another Hellbat attack. Get Viking first, then go into a medevac. Add on Marauder slow. Very fast, cheap upgrade, and suddenly you have a devastating attack on those queens that are usually what defends first and foremost. I literally talked about that last game. The queens buy the time for the safely timed Baneling nest, but if they can't by the time, if they die and then the Banelings are there, well, the Marauder's still there to soak things up, and the Hellbat splits can still be good enough that the Queens really are an important addition. This can be such a devastating attack if it's not expected, if it's one of those things where you're just out of position, even though you can technically hold against it without full knowledge it's happening. You can just end the game. It certainly can, not that we've seen it happen in quite some time. I was gonna say a quick layer. No, it's a normal time layer. Again, with the Baneling nest being very, if not identical timing, very similar to it. Spore Crawler's on the way, perhaps predicting the follow-up of Banshees at some point, but will also be helpful in moving forward to help deal with a medevac. Potentially, if you've got the micro, if you've got the thought process to use it. Thank you, Mike Kochu, for the 2 months. I love CalebAracous. That's what he says. Here's the attack. The queens are not jumped on super immediately. They try and retreat, but one of the high energy queens is going to be targeted down. Another transfuse, though. Decent amount of queens getting into a nice surround means that the damage isn't as direct, isn't as fast as it would have liked to have been from Jason, but without much more. Okay, there come the Banelings. The queens will lose their lives, and a couple of them do on the right side. Good focus fire on the medevac despite Jason's attempt to micro there. As Mars are still alive, and most of the lings have been cleaned up. It's a nasty, close battle, but one that does end up slightly in Jason's favor. He's going to be able to take down more lings as they pop out. One by one, the Hellbats and the Hellbats are the most effective. And with only 2 queens adding in damage, that's not a lot of damage, guys. It's just not. Liberator even coming forward here. Spore Crawlers are in anti-Liberator positions. If the Liberator was coming in to harass the mineral line, but it's coming in just to face the queens directly. Grabs one of the queens, one of those last queens. Even almost grabs the second one. Very close there. And is also getting a lot of lost mining time. So overall, very effective Liberator. Overall, I would say an effective push if Jason wasn't putting so much into it. He's actually still continuing to rally in, and I'm not sure that is the best idea. But lings are not being paid attention to. A bit of a, yeah, he did not pay attention to that. They would have wanted to be on creep at the very least, seeing that it is a continued attack. But Jason does lose the Marauder. He does have to face more queens without the Marauder slow helping him this time. And Thunderbird, when it comes down to it, is not a short map. So the rally of the Marauder especially is taking quite some time. One queen is very low, but she is the most important queen with all that transfuse energy, and she's not being torn down. Liberator could be microed again to just a Spore Crawler, again, if Caleb has the micro to do so. Looks like this queen should die. Nope, Jason has stopped paying attention. He's microing the Liberator or something along those lines. Spore Crawler was not moved immediately, but the drones are pulled immediately. Well, Caleb is certainly messing up his macro right now, understandably so. He is defending, and Jason had committed so much to the follow-up attack. I don't think I like it anymore. I think for the first attack, I liked what Jason got, especially with the Liberator, denying what it did. But there was not, you know, the third CC, I think, could have been a little bit faster. Hell, it maybe even could be on location, because if you stop sending in the Hellions one at a time to die to these Lings, you actually have 6 or 8 Hellions to defend, and they have the option to turn the Hellbat mode too, which makes it a lot easier. So I would say that that would have been the perfect follow-up. You know, cut your losses, harass the Liberator as much as possible to continue buying that time, but then otherwise, through to see on location, Thunderbird, only 1 choke into the 3 base setup here. And, of course, focusing more on the macro. But both of them certainly getting cut a little bit on that macro. Jason, you know, committing so much with the attack. It was probably one of the easier things to do, right? There's so many things to do while attacking or defending. And one of the hardest things is actually getting your production set up. It's getting your tech slapped down. It's getting your gases built. The easiest thing you can do is continue building SCVs, continue pumping out stuff from whatever larva you do have, that sort of stuff, right? So I think it was one part he did see an opportunity to maybe overwhelm the Zerg, and then another part, you know, kind of thinking that if he microed that, he didn't necessarily, like, it was worth the trade-off of not slapping those production facilities, which unfortunately it's ideally not a trade-off you have to make if, again, you are up there with like innovation and Mario and stuff like that. But in this case, I don't think it was quite worth it. But Caleb, again, I try to bring up the Zerg point of view there too. Like, you're not slapping down your tech structures, you're not getting your gases situated so that there's a very uneven balance of minerals to gas. Those type of things do start to affect him as well. I just think that the follow-up explodes a little bit faster for the Zerg in this situation. One of the things that most of these Hellbat attacks don't take care of are the creep boomers. They don't spend time clearing it up. They have a job to do. They want to win the game. So that's one of those things the Zerg players usually can fall back on, even if it means that it's not a whole ton. Sometimes they are just dead. Creep spread doesn't matter. But in a game like this, I would say that it does matter, and Caleb's bank will eventually be used. Although it doesn't look pretty right now, it's only not pretty if Jason's attacking him. Which Jason's not attacking him. Jason is once again going into that faster fourth, faster starports. And the mistakes of the mid/early game will matter less and less as we get to the 14-15 minute mark, which I assume we will. Neither one of them really set up to do a huge attack. Couple tanks being added in. I think couple tanks are almost always a great option, both in an attack, as we saw Jason do last game, but also keeping at, I want to say at least 3, maybe 4, maybe a little bit more on the defensive side. For those times the Cyclones do have to retreat back in, for the times where the Zerg player does go back into Lings, or in Caleb's case, he is willing to go back into Roach Ravager. Adrenal Gland's one of the first things that Caleb gets. I didn't notice that that's one of the things he got first last game, but I definitely knew he had a faster Spire. Adrenal Gland is just a very interesting choice, because you would say that against mech especially, Lings are like, they're supposed to not be the best thing, but when it comes to this around, and it comes to run-bys for certain, they can be very effective. And they were a big reason why a lot of those engagements last game looked kind of as wonky as they did. And, you know, that Drilling Claw upgrade was there last game, and I just felt like it could have been big. It ended up not being so big, did it? Didn't it? Maybe we'll see a little bit more. I think they were supposed to kind of replace the idea of tanks. And in some of those engagements, if he had been able to get a couple of really good Widowmine shots, I guess that would have been a big difference, but I think he stopped making them, and they just started to get countered as well. Caleb changed things up with a Nidus Worm. That could be very difficult for Jason to deal with. He did not have to worry about run-bys for quite a time in that last game. There was one that was blocked by Thors, and then the next one to do a lot of damage was when the game was kind of already over. So now having to deal with pulling army units back, that will maybe mess up the micro on the front lines. And this army is still, you know, a lot about that micro, as opposed to tanks, where maybe with the tanks you worry a little bit less about just constantly paying attention, constantly babysitting that army. Double Spire here. Caleb has every reason to feel very confident. His creep spread is better than last game, and that every one of the attack paths is covered. And hopefully he won't lose the attack paths like he did last time, which, ooh, was surprising. But I'm getting a decent shot there. So the Double Spire, the aggressive placement of his army, and the aggressive creep spread all makes a lot of sense. I think you can go even deeper and go into more upgrades. This is the time to get like infestor upgrades, to get double upgrades for your roaches and ravagers as well. Obviously you'll get double upgrades for the air units, which is going to outpace Jason, who, oof, he has not started any upgrades. I pointed this out last time. I think he was just late to using double armory, but this game, much later. I think he just kind of forgot about those upgrades. Taking this base without actually getting rid of the minerals means that these cyclones don't have a lot of room to maneuver, and Caleb has found him in the most awkward position possible. But he does manage to somehow escape with a couple of cyclones to the north side. Liberators also being a very good help here. When they're clumped up, the Crystal Battles are quite good, but they actually were spread out just enough. There's enough of them that they will scare off the Roach Ravager army. That was really scary. I think Jason should go ahead and open up the mineral path. Couple more Liberators going down. He's got so many Liberators trying to be aggressive with it. And that would be a scary Liberator count in most games. Caleb has the option to, well, buy time. For one, with this Nidus Worm, expelling these cracklings out, as well as enough creep spread and time to buy in other ways to remax on bigger and better units, more suited towards the anti-Liberator option as well. Should he so desire. If he wants to just play this game where he's left, right, left, right, left, right, then I guess that also seems to be working quite well for him. Denial this base, but not quite catching this one. He could also be attacking that. Lings once again and get into the main base. I was gonna say Burrow would be a great option, but he already has it. He just hasn't used it. No, the Nidus Worm comes up. There's a lot of army to be in the main base taking care of this, but in the place of tanks, he now has Liberators to kind of, again, not have to babysit as much. And to protect those with missile turrets as well, you really don't have to babysit them as much. It's still annoying against Vipers. Missile turrets won't, like, you know, one-shot Vipers until a really absurd number. But, you know, it's still supposed to be supported by the Cyclones to the ground. Army readjusts to the right side. At least Jason's here to try and defend, but the Planetary is not done. He's gonna go for the Master Pair, but forced to lift off regardless. Liberators, again, do not want to clump up in one spot. You can see Jason trying to micro against that. But anytime he does that, maybe he's not microing the rest of the ground army, and well, now there's Corruptors, so it's not just about the Corrosive Biles anymore. The Corruptors took care of those easy peasy, no serves to help them out here, and Jason is losing these engagements. Caleb, the last game, was losing his drones. He was losing a couple bases. He wasn't really banking a whole ton. Very opposite in this game, as just continues to rally forward here. Even peeing on the Corruptors, and just simply put, nothing that Jason can do about that. Master Pair will not out-repair like more than like 5 or 6 Corruptors or something when they're fully souped up. You have the old Void Ray attack. So, readjust, go to the bottom left, but I really feel like Jason should be mining these out. One of the reasons not to mine these is to stop any Ling run-bys, which he is rightfully afraid of, and they could just like entirely circumvent the Planetary, which would be very, very annoying. But he's really putting an army dependent on micro in a place where they can't micro if they're trying to defend that. But, you know, this actually would be microable. He's just not in position. So the Corruptors, again, taking care of the command center, and most of them will live. Attack over to the left side, and a Nidus Swarm. Jason being pulled left, right, center, up, down, and while he's struggling to hang on, I guess he is hanging on, it feels like a matter of time. You really wanted to get at least one of these expansions up. You double expand, I guess that kind of increases your chances of one of the bases. will be up and running, but in this case, just lost him 2 bases, actually 3, with this space going down. And this one probably not going to be reliably mining. Such a difficult army for Jason to have to move, so, you know, as a reaction army, it's quite poor. If he were ever able to get up these planetaries with missile turrets with liberators, I think he's in a very good position. He's going to have 6 bases then, building whatever army that he he wants to, whatever he was planning on going for. But as is, he's forced to react to all these movements, and he just can't do it quite fast enough. And Caleb is just getting farther and farther ahead, choosing the Remax on Roach Ravager. Baneling is totally fine call as he collapses in. GG. But I was also going to point out that he had all of the upgrades on the way on the back of that. Investor upgrades.